Rejection doesn't equal that you're not enough.
They only put their best foot forward online.
There are people that I am not their cup of tea.
Speaking of tea.
Yes.
Hey, welcome to another Tea Time with Tommy. I have here a very special guest, Jessica Smith.
Hi.
Jessica is a licensed therapist. Actually, Jessica's one of the very first people I met when I moved to Greenville, Tennessee. We've worked in the same organizations, but in the last year we've worked together.
Yeah.
We're actually across the office from each other. So Jessica, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I am a licensed professional counselor. I've been one for 10 years.
Okay.
And I think we worked at kind of one of our first jobs kind of out of grad school situations together, and then we've been working across the hall from each other for the last year. I've worked with lots of populations, mainly kids and teenagers, branching into adults and college age the last couple of years, and see a wide range of things.
Okay. So one of the reasons why I asked Jessica to be here, the last few months, I've worked a lot with college students. I've worked a lot with young adults and older adults, and this topic keeps coming up of singleness. And just recently, there was an article published that talked about the pandemic of loneliness. One thing that Jessica does, she's a minister at our church. She's in what we call the hyphen ministry, but basically it's that hyphen between childhood and adulthood, and that's the hyphen in between, and it's really the singles ministry.
Yeah, it's prior to anybody getting married. Age ranges from 18 to 30, so it's in that gap. Just is to cover that gap. And they're all single.
Yeah, they're all single. So you've been doing that for what, 3 years now?
2
years.
Yes, 2
okay.
years.
So actually, that was something I really thought about a lot as I was doing youth ministry for a while, and talked to you about it, and you felt like that was a ministry that you would be great to be a part of, especially. And now it's a whole different generation than it was when I was a young person. I remember just recently, again, talk about that article. That article talked about how at 33 is a new age to move out of your parents' house.
Yeah.
And 34 is the new age to be getting married. And 35 is the new age to be having a baby. So it's a lot of changes compared to, again,
Absolutely.
20, 25 years ago.
Absolutely.
I think it was like 23 years old was like the normal.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think there's so many factors to that. Where everything went, I mean, and we saw it of course in COVID years, but even before that, people were online dating, and it's just, there's a separation from being able to have that more organic connection with people. And so I think that's what contributes to a lot of singleness too, is that it's just an online world these days, and there's just not as much time to be in the same place at the same time.
And in that same article, they talked about like 60% of people will find their mate online. Again, it's a different world, but you're right. It's a digital world. It's a way we connect. It's a way we find our likeness and find what we can contribute to the society. So yeah, and then COVID had a bit to do with it.
But I think too, with the online or digital world, I think that's not natural for us, and so I think that's one reason it makes it so much more difficult to connect that way. There's trust components to it, and scary components to not being able to know who someone really is.
For about 3 years I worked in Nashville from here, which is about 5 hours from Nashville.
Totally different world.
Yeah. And I remember going. I was working there for a year before I actually walked into Nashville and walked to the office and
Yeah.
met people. And I remember meeting my supervisor. And my supervisor, she walked over to me because we were seeing each other online. And when she walked over to me, I looked up and I was like, "Wow, you're a lot taller than I expected."
Yeah.
Because it's you don't see,
Right.
and so it's like I think you're correct on like the trust issue.
Hmm.
um, I've had clients to tell me like they only put their best foot forward online, which makes
Yeah.
sense.
Expected. I don't know if you remember during COVID years when we were all wearing the masks, and I feel like my brain would fill in the gaps of what I thought they looked like behind the
Mm,
mask, because I was working with them every week. I
hmm.
was seeing them all the time in person. And then when they took it off, I'm like, that's not what you look like in my brain,
Yeah.
And I think the same thing for the digital world is we fill in the gaps to what we don't
Mm,
know. And sometimes that's not accurate because we don't have factual
yeah.
basis
I
for
mean,
it.
I think that's right. I was working at the college
Hmm.
during COVID, and I remember like nobody was talking. It was just a weird situation. Like they would walk across the courtyard and you would hear nothing. There was no communication. Everybody's wearing the mask. Interaction in classes was limited, and I think, like you said, you were filling in the gaps because all of a sudden that mask has been lifted, and
Hmm.
now we're hearing their true voice and their true thoughts. And again, what you're getting is you're getting authentic, but it's digital authentic.
Yeah. And
Mm,
it's not, and I think where it's not what we thought it would be, we question if it is authentic.
mm,
You know what I mean? Because of what it doesn't match
yeah.
what we had in our mind. I don't know.
So
That took an interesting turn.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it really did. It's like you're looking at what you're seeing versus what you're getting.
Hmm.
So the dating world and the dating scene. Tell me a little bit about that with like the single people right now.
It's wild.
Yeah.
You have all varieties. There, especially with online dating
Hmm.
and the dating apps, and even Facebook groups that are trying to combine to make maybe have the same belief system. Even that's been hard to get people to connect to.
Mm.
Now, and in the dating world or in the dating apps, you've got people who want everything from as casual to as serious as can be. So it's got the whole range of things. I don't know if people are always very honest about what they want.
Hmm.
Um, and so there's things like that. I don't know. I mean, I don't see people going out and meeting people, maybe in the same sense as they might have used to, like meet people at school or meet people at church or meet people, I don't know, go up to someone in the grocery store. I don't know that I hear much about those kinds of interactions as much as I do all online stuff, all the dating apps,
Yeah.
all of things like
I
that.
mean, you have everything from Christian Harmony to
Mhm.
Bumble to Tinder. And then
Mhm.
working with college students,
Mhm.
I've had to work through some heartbreaks
Yes.
because
Mhm.
wow, this person looked so like was so into me, and they only wanted one thing when we finally got together.
Yeah. I've had the same thing with clients, and it's been those are rough.
Hmm.
Those are really rough. Um, I mean, they even have a whole show of called
Yeah,
Catfish.
the cat. Yes.
Where you can present whatever you want
Hmm.
and convince as many people as you want that that's who you are, and it be completely false.
So, confession time for me.
Okay.
So it's a code of ethics now that you cannot present yourself uh, false
Hmm.
online, right? You can't make something false so you can find a client.
Yeah.
Well, 10 years ago, maybe even more than that, 10 years ago, I actually made a fake profile on Facebook so I could like so I was working with kids,
Hmm.
and we would go to court and I would be like, why wasn't this mother paying child support? Well, because the mom was out partying the night
Hmm.
before. I have screenshots to show that. Yeah. Now that's illegal. Now that's unethical. But you know how easy it was for me? I took a picture of some guy in a magazine, stuck him in there. I was in the in the army. I was a
They're always in the army, just so you know.
well that way when somebody asks me, I could be like, I can't talk about it. Yeah,
It's confidential.
it was a whole
You're
thing.
not classified for that level of
And I got this,
information.
and there was this town in Illinois. I just friended all these people in Illinois, and they started friending. So it looked like I was built. Like I'm telling you, it was a whole
You
thing.
had all these friends in Illinois that you didn't know.
Now looking back on it, I'm like, I could have easily catfished somebody
Yes.
because
Yeah.
I had this whole
Mm-hmm.
persona that was not real, and that's how scary easy it is.
Mm-hmm.
So with it being scary easy, how do you kind of navigate that?
Personally, I've tried a little bit of confession time. I'm single too.
Forgot to
um,
mention that. So
and I've done a little dabbling, but it's terrible. I think partly because of my work,
mm-hmm.
partly because I know how people, you know, I know the dangers there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so acutely aware that anytime I have dabbled in any of the online stuff, it's scary to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't trust that well. So it's never been a thing for me.
Okay.
What I mean that I've gone very far with, like I don't think I've ever. I think I met one person, and I was like, I don't. That's it was too scary, and
Yeah.
it was fine. It turned out fine. He was genuine, but it was a little scary. I don't know how they're just like,
So then you meet the person, you have like a coffee chat or whatever you,
mm-hmm.
but also there's distance to think about, right?
Yeah.
Somebody in New Mexico, it's not as easy coming over to
Oh,
Tennessee.
right, right. I've never done anything like that, but I know people that do,
Mm-hmm.
and I know people have been really successful with it at the same time.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Again, 60% of the people that
mm-hmm.
meet their mate now will be meeting them online.
Yeah,
Mm.
and it's I mean there on social media you can find any kind of community that you want to be a part of, and so they're there.
Mm.
And I've become friends with um, some in different communities and church communities and single church friends, that sort of thing. And to where like when I see them, it's really cool. Like I went to a conference in May and met some of the friends that I'd never met in person before, but I considered friends
Mm.
already. And that's an interesting kind of concept that you've never met them in person.
And then you meet
You
them at a
consider them
concert.
friends
Okay.
prior to that,
Yeah.
meet them in person. And I mean, you hug and it's excited to see them, and
Mm-hmm.
you do things that are just fun. It just feels, some of that felt really natural. I don't know that it would in all settings.
So that brings up an interesting point because I've talked to some of my clients that are single, and right there's this like the loneliness pandemic is what they're
Mm-hmm.
calling it. But there's a lot of good points to that too. Like you could just take and go to a concert. You don't
Yes.
have to ask anybody for
Mm-hmm.
permission or take anybody with you.
Yeah.
There's some good points. I mean, that's a
Mm-hmm.
negative also, right? I don't have anybody go with me, but hey, if I want to
But I
travel the
love
world,
that. But I
yeah,
didn't always love that.
mm-hmm,
I think it took a lot of growth and maturity and that sort of thing. I didn't always love being alone,
mm-hmm,
or doing things alone. I will do just about anything alone these
yeah.
days and love it. Love it, love it. Um, because you're
So,
right, you don't have
what
to
would you
ask.
speak to the person that is at that point where, like, I don't, I want to do something with people?
Find community.
There you go.
You have to find community. Um, and that's hard these days. I don't know. I have a client who's fantastic at making and she told me lots of things. She tells me that I said there was Facebook groups and communities for any kind of topic or lifestyle or anything that you would want. And she would find hiking groups and she would find volleyball groups. And I mean, she has found so many connections to people that way. And she'll go and she'll do it by herself. And she's single. And I mean, it's just really cool to watch her do that. because I didn't even know some of that was out there. I was, I was more like I had this built-in church community
Mm-hmm.
because I was really involved with church, and all my best friends are there, and all of that. So I have my own community, but there are so much more. I think we originally always think church, work, school.
Mm-hmm.
That's our built-in communities, right? There's so much more than that out there.
Because
Different hiking groups, and I even had one client tell me there's like a rock painting group
rock
that
painting
they
group.
get together and they paint
Okay.
rocks. I mean, so you can find community in just about any kind of hobby topic, anything.
Yeah. I've actually thought about my Facebook groups that I'm part of, and it's like, okay, car enthusiast, comic books,
Mm-hmm.
and any. It's like
Yeah.
finding those communities is
Yeah.
big. Hmm. So you would you suggest finding community.
Mm-hmm.
That actually means for those that struggle with being extroverts,
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to have issues.
So there's a joke, and maybe it's not really a joke that there it's like an extrovert finds an introvert and just takes them everywhere with them. I'm an introvert.
Okay.
I am quite shy, not shy, but like I connect one on one much better than I do in a group, and so um, groups are not necessarily intimidating for me, but I'm just the quiet one,
Mm-hmm.
and so the key is you find an extrovert to take you places with them, and then it's a little easier.
Yeah. I
I don't know if that's really
no.
it applies in my life,
No.
and I've seen memes about it
Yeah. It's
before
very
too.
accurate. I teach groups
Mm-hmm.
at a college, and one of the things is identifying who you are in your own group versus when I'm teaching the college class, I'm like, who here identifies as the leader, and who here identifies as
Mm-hmm.
the peacemaker, and who identifies and who feels like they're the scapegoat. Right? There's different
Yeah.
places. So if you can find yourself that group and embed yourself into that
Mm-hmm.
group.
So I have a friend group, and this is something that took me far too long to learn. It took me far too long to learn, um, and it's one of the main things that I teach clients today because of I've walked the road, and I didn't start learning and fixing it until I was already in my 30s.
Mm.
And it was that I constantly I had a friend, my friend group was, I'm the quiet one. I'm kind of a nerd. I like to learn things. I like school, all of that sort of thing. So that's my kind of identifiers, right? And my friends, I have the funny one, I have the really social one, and then I have the one who can just like talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in my early 30s, I was the quiet one. Still am, but I love that about me now. Back then, it would just about destroy me after
Mm.
social events because I felt like something was wrong with me and something was like, why couldn't I just be myself and be, because I'm a little quirky and I have a little sass to me. But like, it was hard for me to share that. And so I started really looking at that, and God really did help me to learn to like love who he made me to be.
Mm.
And when I accepted and loved who I was in my friend group, it allowed some things to blossom that I never even would have thought finally would. Like I became more talkative. I became talkative to people that like I didn't even know, not necessarily all the time. I let out this funny side of me that I didn't really know was always there. So I teach clients all the time, like, you have to figure out who you are and what you bring to the table and
Mm.
quit trying to fix yourself into someone else's box because you're never going to fit in their box.
I love that. There's a verse in the Bible I'm thinking about right now called "Iron sharpens iron,"
Mm-hmm.
and it's this idea of like to get physically, if you take a piece of iron and take it to a
Mm-hmm.
sword and you sharpen it, it makes it
Yeah.
sharper. But you can actually take each other and build upon each other
Mm-hmm.
and make each other better as you move forward. So the individual that's sitting there being like, I don't have a friend group, you're suggesting to them, find it and just
But
put
you have to
yourself.
love who you are instead of
Mm,
making yourself like mirror them or copy I mean, yes, we can have people that we look up to and that we admire and all of that. my friend, during all of that process, when I was learning all of that, my really social friend, she's the one I would bounce all my ideas off of, and I was the rawest with her because she saw me whenever I would really struggle after things, and she would tell me, like one time, it always stands out in my mind, and I never took into account how they viewed me.
Mm.
Like I always was like, they're the funny one, they're the social one, they're like everybody likes them, everybody wants to talk to them, all of those things. And she said, Jess, you're the smart one. And I was like, so they saw my value.
Mm-hmm.
They saw the things that I was interested in. It didn't have to be exactly like them. And so when you find who you are and show the world that, that's when you find, like, to me, that's when I like really found my people,
Mm-hmm.
that like, and those are people that value me. Um,
You found yourself when you found your people.
well, I think I had to find myself before I found my
Find your
people,
people. Okay.
because I was just trying to fit into boxes before
Mm-hmm.
then. I was just trying to be like them, and I can't be like them.
I love that. So, thinking about it, some of my questions I had going into this, especially working with some of the single clients I have, it's like these little things like I don't even have someone that when I get sick that I can lean on, or I'm still living in my parents' basement. They're trying to find a friend group, or even find a boyfriend girlfriend,
Mm-hmm.
and be like, hey, right, I have to give a little bit.
You do.
Okay.
You really do. I've had to put myself in, not in situations that, I mean, just in situations that were tough for me. Being um, introverted and kind of not. I mean, it's almost like you have to know me before you, like, you have to be around me a lot before I get to really show you who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I'm shy, I'm quiet, all the things. But putting yourself out there to me has been, that's a hard process.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're putting yourself out there and really not knowing what you're going to get in return.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's going to, I mean, of course, there's rejection in that, but there's also acceptance in that.
Yeah.
It has both sides of the coin. And of course, rejection hurts. Unfortunately, it's part of life.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that I am not their cup of tea.
Speaking of tea.
Yes. Because if we're honest with ourselves, not everybody else is our cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to be theirs either. And that's okay.
So be okay with not being everyone's cup of tea.
Rejection doesn't equal that you're not enough or okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just that you don't click. That's it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean either person is bad. I just think we have to learn that rejection is part of our life. We can let it destroy us. I mean, rejection is powerful, but
would it be fair to say it could actually, it could destroy you, but it also could maybe build you up to accept who you are?
yeah, I've considered that absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
because you know when things of any relationship, friendship, relationship, whatever, don't work out, you can't just blame the other person for everything.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look at your part in that too, and that helps, to me, that helps me grow.
Yeah.
Looking at what I brought to the table that wasn't necessarily helpful or productive or whatever, you just have to figure out what you need to grow in too.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard this quote before. It says, change is going to happen, but growth is an option, and you get to choose to grow.
Yeah.
So, thinking about church groups, right? What can they do to help some of the singles in their congregation?
I think that every church needs to have some people that understand that there are single people there, whether they are never married, divorced, widowed, whatever the scenario is, that will say, when it's time to, step out or be with family and stuff, that they say, hey, Jess, come on, come over here with me.
Yeah.
I've not always had that. And over the last few years, I've absolutely had that. And it has, because my family doesn't go to church with me,
Mhm.
but having that is so crucial because church is more designed for, not designed, I don't even know the right word for it.
Maybe it's
Family
yeah, it's
oriented.
the expectation of the church, right?
Yes.
The way.
And I think a lot of people can take it really personally.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's unfair to take it personally because it's not the church's fault that I'm single,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm single because I'm single.
Mhm.
That's the season that I'm in, and it's not fair for me to blame the church for having some family oriented things. We should have, because we've got kids, we've got teenagers that really need
Mhm.
that family oriented structure to things. Um, Singles have to understand that, and then just almost make yourself fit into that.
There's one time I don't know if I was part of the church, but I saw the advertisement for the church, and the church was like, we're here to, it was a singles ministry, like, focused.
Mm-hmm.
So bring your cars in and get the oil changes. Bring, if you need, like, someone to, bounce ideas off of. If you need someone to go eat dinner with, and it was like this big
Mm-hmm.
push and focus for singles, and it's like, that was a great concept,
Absolutely.
right? Singles need that, and I know in the day and age we live in now, right? We have to be careful that we're not too pushy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's their choice if they want to be part of that.
Yeah.
But we should offer it.
Yeah, absolutely. And within our organization, especially, that's becoming more common
Mm-hmm.
with the sense of singles conferences. We've got singles ministries that are emerging in individual churches, not just state districts,
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I am part of different things where there are single adults that are taking on the challenge to bring singles in their area
Mm-hmm.
together. They're
Awesome.
planning outings. They are planning, dinners and just different things like that where before, somebody has to do it.
Yeah,
And it just takes one person to start that up and it kind of really catches on.
I like that.
Um, Things are, like I said, things are out there. You just have to decide if you want to. You can sit in loneliness, you can sit in being alone, and that can be the focus of your life, or you can choose to not let that
Yeah, and
happen.
I think so. The secular, the kind of like, psychology, is a psychology article where it was like the pandemic of loneliness, and then I read this, like, this Bible article, this magazine that says, eh, instead of being like lonely, it's the blessing of singleness.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's a thought shift. Instead of it being a pandemic of loneliness, maybe at this moment, it's a blessing of singleness.
Yeah. I mean, I know for me that let's talk ministry for a second. I have the flexibility to work with young adults
Mm-hmm.
who are not married, who are in college, getting out of college. We do lots of fun things, all of that. I have that flexibility. I have the flexibility to then be an asset to our church in the sense of like just jumping in other areas that maybe somebody couldn't help in. I'm like, sign me up. I'll do. You have that benefit as a single person to jump into other areas um, because you don't have a typical responsibility of a family.
You're not navigating
Yeah.
3 or 4 schedules, right? You got
Right.
your kid's schedule, you got
Right.
your spouse's schedule, you've
Mm-hmm.
got your own schedule, and
Yeah.
so you get to say, "This is my schedule. I know it,
Mm-hmm.
and I can work around it."
Yeah.
So,
And then out of that, like I get to travel and I get to go see people and I get to go do fun things
mhm.
and um I love that part of my life.
So could we say to some of our single listeners that in this season, embrace it,
Hmm.
right? It's a season. It doesn't mean it's always going to be
Right.
that way.
Right.
But while it is, embrace it and make the
Yeah.
most of it.
Yeah, I think that that had to be, yes, there is still a desire in me to have a family,
Mm-hmm.
to get married and have children and those sorts of things. And if that's what God has for me, fantastic. If not, that means He has something still better for me, you know?
Yeah.
But for now, I have to be okay in the weight of a family. And I, just because I'm waiting doesn't mean that I have to be miserable.
Mm. That's just because you're waiting doesn't mean you have to be miserable, right? The
Yeah.
waiting could be like a burden, or the waiting can be a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
a fun challenge, a unique
Yeah.
challenge. So, parting words for any of our listeners.
I think don't get hung up on the box that you have to check
Mm,
of being single.
yeah.
Um, don't get hung up on that title. That does not equal who you are. And like I said, you don't have to be miserable just because you're waiting.
Yeah.
I think that's a big piece of this. Is I refuse to be miserable just because I'm waiting. So go have fun.
So, before we end, can you tell us what tea we're drinking? Because this is real tea time with Tommy,
Yes.
and I have a few teas that we can pick out of, but you brought your own special tea, which is delicious.
It is called hot cinnamon spice, and it is like
Spice.
drinking the red hot gum.
Yeah, it's
Is that
really
what it's
good.
called? Red
Yeah,
hot gum?
red hot gum.
Yeah.
So,
Or no, big red gum.
hmm,
Yeah, so good. You just add a little honey and it's perfect.
hmm.
It's a spicy tea.
Well, thank you, Jess, for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. And this is another Tea Time with Tommy.